The 11th of March 1978. After an absence of almost 5 years, the American rock band Spirit were finally returning to the UK, and tonight playing at my local theatre, the Rainbow, Finsbury Park, North London. A bunch of us had met up at our local pub, everyone a die-hard fan of the band, and off we went. For those about to rock, we salute you. 5 years earlier, Spirit had blown the roof off the Rainbow with the wildest, craziest, wackiest gig I've ever seen. They ended up performing 7 encores, a record for the venue. In the following 5 years, the band had become more disciplined, now pacing themselves rather than going full tilt from the opening number. In 1973, the band had done a massive tour of the UK and Europe, and it had exhausted the band, physically and mentally. Walking through the doors of the Rainbow, you could feel the buzz. There was electricity in the air. Taking our seats in the front row, I leaned back and looked upward to the ceiling of the theatre. In that ceiling was set dozens of small lights. So up there in the darkness, it looked like the theatre had no roof, and you were just gazing up into the night sky with loads of stars twinkling out there. It was magical. And years later I learned that at one point they had installed the effect of making lightning bolts shoot across that night sky. That I would have loved to have seen. I'm sad to say I can't remember anything about the first band on the bill, the punk group Alternative TV. But I do remember the next band, The Police. Yes, The Police, who would go on in the next 4 years to become one of the biggest bands in the world. At the time, I thought they were just an okay pub band, nothing special, but fair play to them for what they achieved. And so, at about 9 p.m, on trooped Spirit. The great Randy California on guitar, Larry Fuzzy Knight on bass, and on drums, Mr. Skin himself, Ed Cassidy. The announcer says, "A band we have all been waiting a long time to see back in England. Please give a warm welcome to Spirit." There were a few cheers, but I think everyone had such high expectations of the band. Were they going to be any good? Would it match 1973? Would it be a letdown? Ed Cassidy takes his place behind this massive drum kit and starts pounding out these complex rhythms. Then in comes Randy California, Echoplex pedal turned up to the max as the sound of his guitar bounces off the walls. He's only playing 2 or 3 notes at a time, but it sounds magical. Fuzzy Knight joins in, adding a funky foundation to this groove of the gods. I have to check there are only 3 guys on stage as the sound is colossal. Yep, only 3. Boogie on down to the Rainbow Jam. Boogie on down to What I Say. The spirit is now, and it's here to stay. Towards the end of the piece, Larry and Ed ramp up the tempo, creating a wave of sound for Randy to surf on and produce an incredible solo. Next up, Mr. Skin, from the classic 12 Dreams of Dr. Sardonicus. It's a song that should have been a massive hit for the band, with its funky soul feel. Here the band deliver a powerful, driving, rocky version, and by now the whole audience is on their feet. Randy invites the whole audience to sing along if you want to on the next song. The Ecological Anthem, The Beautiful Nature's Way, a song that has been covered over the years by dozens of artists. It's nature's way of telling you in a song. It's nature's way of telling you something's wrong. Randy wrote this back in 1971 in 20 minutes while looking out at the smog surrounding Los Angeles. Here he adds a guitar solo that plays with the song's melody, that weaves in and out of the song's melody in the style of one of his heroes, Mr. George Harrison. He also adds an extra verse. You moulded this life to the dream you were making. What will you do when your whole earth is shaking? It's over now. Do you know how to get back home? Something's wrong. Spidery finger-picked guitar lines introduce Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone. Once upon a time you dressed so fine. It's another tour de force by the band. The song swirls and dances around the arena. California wringing every ounce of emotion out of it as he delivers Dylan's biting lyrics. And as the chorus comes around, everyone joins in. How does it feel to be on your own with no direction home, like a rolling stone? I have to mention Ed Cassidy's incredible drumming on this track. He's all over the kit. He's laying down all these incredible little fills and counterpoints. Just stunning. When you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose. You're invisible now. You got no secrets to conceal. We don't want it to, but the song eventually finishes. Next up, Hollywood Dream. And for the next 4 minutes or so, the band takes flight and takes us on a thrilling musical roller coaster ride. With its driving psychedelic riff, seismic bass from Larry Fuzzy Knight, and Ed Cassidy playing like a man possessed. It's crazy. If you could have plugged the energy from this track into the national grid, you'd have powered England for a week or so. And just when you think the song might level out, Randy captures the riff on a tape loop, jumps off the stage and starts the solo, and the music builds and builds. Randy now down on his knees, wringing every drop of emotion out of that guitar, taking the song to its peak, and then somehow managing to leap back on the stage and finish the number. Just wow. The Kinks' Like Animal Zoo follows, and the band have the whole audience with them, and it feels like the best party you've ever been at. And then looking round, I noticed that there's no security. There's not a bouncer in sight. But hey, you know, when things are this good, you don't need them. You're much too fat and a little too long. You're much too fat and a little too long. 1984 crashes in with its thunderous intro as Randy sings about plexiglastic copters and Big Brother, and I look up at the night sky above me, expecting to see lightning flicker across the sky. Randy California continues to knock out one great guitar solo after another, and I've seen them all. I've seen all the greats, Beck, Page, Clapton, but when this man was in the groove, there were few who could stay with him. Paul Lester, the rock critic, once described this concert thus: "It was like an ancient hippie god, Randy California, had come down to visit us and play his guitar for us for just one night." Tonight, California, Larry Fuzzy Knight and Ed Cassidy were not on another level. It was more like they were on another planet, and everyone in the audience knew they were witnessing something special, something magical. A long, beautiful guitar intro leads us into Hey Joe, Randy's fingers dancing along the fretboard. Many people have dismissed California over the years as another Hendrix imitator, but hold on a second. This guy was there with Jimmy when Jimmy played his first solo gig in New York, and then played 6 sets a night for the next 6 months until Chas Chandler signed Jimmy up and brought him to the UK. Jimmy had wanted Randy to come and be part of the experience, but sadly that was not to be. Randy was there jamming with Jimmy when Jimmy was working on embryonic versions of a lot of his early songs. "Give me the gun, I shot her." Randy leaps off the stage and starts walking amongst the audience, up and down the aisles. It was something Randy just loved to do, and the fans loved him for it. There he was, ripping off one great solo after another, shaking hands, playing the guitar with his teeth behind the back of his head. Sting, watching from the side of the stage, says, "I watched while Spirit tear the place apart." Randy California giving a more plausible impression of Jimi Hendrix than I would have ever thought possible. I find his rendition of Hey Joe very moving and heavily nostalgic, especially since Jimmy had died so tragically almost 8 years before. A new song follows, the heavily psychedelic Looking Down from a Mountain, which contains an awesome bass solo from Larry Fuzzy Knight. The song is all about astral travelling and leaving your body, and this far into the gig I feel like I'm doing a little bit of astral travelling myself. Another new song follows, Love Charged, which allows Randy California to walk along the front of the stage shaking hands while still playing another great guitar solo. We drift into All the Same from the second Spirit album, The Family That Plays Together. And during the song, Randy and Larry leave the stage, allowing Ed Cassidy to take his drum solo. Now, normally, most drum solos bore me rigid, but this is just mesmerising. Ed sets up all these polyrhythms, starting off with these massive drumsticks, and somehow they disappear and he continues just using his hands. Shaking Ed's hands, they feel just like old leather, with all his calluses. And then the drumsticks just appear almost like magic in his hands. One minute he plays like Buddy Rich, the next minute John Bonham. Back come Randy and Larry as we career straight into the classic I've Got a Line on You. The band push it to the max, and I turn round and 3,000 people behind me are going absolutely nuts. The winter's almost over, the summer she's coming on strong, and I could love you, love you, love you all year long. Encore number 1. Back come the band, and with some eerie slide guitar, they take us into All Along the Watchtower. Jimi Hendrix took Dylan's acoustic guitar-based original and turned it into an epic, cinematic rock classic. Tonight, California turns in a fantastic rendition that pays homage to both versions. So far, this gig had been amazing, but the band now take it to another level, if you can imagine that. Ed and Larry working like demons to lay down a foundation for those incredible solos. But outside in the cold distance, a wildcat did growl. 2 riders were approaching. The band imitates the riders on their galloping horses as California looks up to the top row and says, "There go the riders all along the top row. Hey, there might be people getting stoned up there." And a bunch of people raised their joints in acknowledgement. And the wind began to howl. California pours out one last epic solo, now pointing his instrument up to those stars. No pause, and we go straight into the next number. Randy reaches out and grabs my hand, shouting at me, "Feel the guitar, Mike, feel the guitar." We both know he's on fire. The song is downer, originally Randy's pain tribute to the loss of his great friend, Jimi Hendrix, now delivered tonight as a song of hope. As Randy comes to his solo, he just winks at me. Been on a downer too long, I've got to get up off of it. And off he goes. Mike Nile, another Spirit bassist, spoke about these moments. He said there were times you would just be playing and then Randy would just take flight. And I'd stand back and look and say, I'm playing bass with one of the greatest guitarists that ever lived. Next up, it's Turn to the Right, the first song Randy California ever wrote. Halfway through the song, Randy shouting to the audience, "Can you feel this? Can you feel this?" Musicians will tell you these moments are so rare when the crowd are right with you and everything you do feels right, and the waves of energy coming off the crowd and the band are just incredible. The band drift back into the opening number, the Rainbow Jam. Can you feel it? Can you feel it? The Spirit loves you. That might all sound a bit hippy-dippy, but the band just loved their fans, and it was Randy's way of saying thank you to us all. Next up, the band do a barnstorming Stone Free. And then, at the side of the stage, Ed Cassidy appears and tells us that there is a time curfew. They can only do one more number. But everyone in the audience is invited to a party the band are holding at the hotel, the Metropole in London. So one more time for London, and we hit Wild Thing, with Randy dive bombing on that whammy bar. And sadly, that's it. The house lights come on, and we don't walk outside, we kind of fall outside. But there's a German dude, Wolfgang, offering to give a lift to the Metropole Hotel. So 10 of us jam inside his Range Rover. Totally crazy and illegal, but what the hell. On nights like this, you just don't care. On arriving at the Metropole, we find that the hotel has barred their doors. There's no way they're going to let 200 denim-clad, long-haired rockers inside their hotel. Randy comes outside and apologises, but we don't care. And then he goes back in, grabs a beat-up old acoustic guitar and comes out and plays for us for another hour. And we talk long into the night. When it's all over, it's about 3 a.m. and we have to walk the 7 miles home from the centre of London to North London. But we don't care. As the police might say, we're walking on the moon. After that, we couldn't wait for the proposed live album to come out, as a performance like that would surely get the band the recognition they deserve and kickstart their career. But sadly, as was the case for the band throughout their career, Bad Luck and Trouble haunted them. All the soundboard mixes of the gig were lost, and all Randy had was what was akin to a bad bootleg recorded by one of his roadies. He did his best to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, but the resulting live record was a poor representation of that night. Sadly, Randy Craig Wolf, left us on January the 2nd, 1997. Since 2000, the year 2000, longtime fan and spirit archivist Mick Skidmore has been sifting through the mountain of recorded material and live gigs that Randy had stockpiled over the years and releasing many fine albums. About 10 years ago, he found the pristine soundboard mixes from that Rainbow gig amongst that material. It's very strange, but I've been a fan now for more years than I care to remember, and there's been so many strange twists and turns in the Spirit saga, it doesn't surprise me. Anyway, Mick put out the concert as a double CD called Two Sides of a Rainbow. It contains the whole show as it happens and with the proper sound. It's accompanied by the original 1978 release of that gig, which sounds like a bootleg. Compare them and you'll see the difference. In the description for this video, I will post a link to that album, Two Sides of a Rainbow by Spirit. London's Rainbow Theatre sadly closed its doors as a music venue in 1982. Now, fast forward to 2010, I'm sitting in a cafe in Penzance, Cornwall, and by chance talking to a guy at a nearby table. This gentleman was in fact the manager of the Rainbow from 1970 till it closed its doors in 1982. We talked for a long time about all the great concerts he'd seen and I had witnessed over the years. And I had to ask him, "What was your favourite concert?" I asked. So many, he said, but if I was pushed, the one gig I would have to say that was the best and most magical above all the rest was Spirit in 1978. Thanks for listening, stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.